and because they write the laws. They're forcing everyone to do what they want.
Now you say it's entirely legal.
Yes, because they pass laws to make it happen. For example, the Federal Reserve System was created by a law of Congress. So the existence of the Federal Reserve System, the great fraud that it is, maybe we'll come back to that later, but just take for the moment the supposition that it is a fraud, it's quite legal.
Quite legal, yes.
It's quite legal. So that doesn't meet the test of a conspiracy. And is it immoral? Well, the people who are running these things do not consider it to be immoral at all. In fact, they believe that their goal, which they proudly call the New World Order, they believe that is the highest morality of all. And they think it's people like you and me who are these throwbacks to Neanderthal times. We're the stupid ones. We don't get it. We're the immoral ones because we're trying to preserve an old archaic system, a system that leads to poverty and war, and we're the ones that are the immoral ones. And they justified using deceit and coercion in order to bring about this higher morality, the New World Order.
Now,
the bottom line of all of that is that according to their concepts, the people who are doing this, it is not a conspiracy at all. But to those of us who have to live with the consequences of their actions, and those of us who are being lied to about the whole thing, I think we're justified in using the word conspiracy.
Right. Now, when it comes to something as strong as a lie, of course, I think we can all say that lying is immoral, and therefore it definitely passes that test on those grounds. But
they would say lying is not always immoral. They would say, the end justifies the means. Sometimes lying is moral. If you have to lie to save your child from being murdered, is that immoral?
Right. So we could go on with that debate. And not to presume that we can psychoanalyze these people, but after all these years of looking at this, where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that motivation comes from in these people?
Well, I have a pretty good sense of it because I've been reading their literature for many, many years. And it comes from a kind of an intellectual pride. Most of these people are very well educated. They come from good families. They're used to being at the upper echelons of society. They feel after a while that they're better than most people, mainly because they've been educated. They don't necessarily say they're better because they have better genes, although some of them do. There's a great movement out there where they feel that race and genetic structure is very, very important. But I think most of them just say, well, we're lucky. We've been given a good education. We've had a chance to be enlightened. And we now have an obligation, they think, to run the world, to run society for everyone's good. Somebody has to run it. You can't let the world be run by all these idiots out there that don't know anything and don't care to know anything. All they want to do is drink beer and watch sitcoms. You can't let those people run the world, can you?
Right.
It has to be us.
Right. So in that sense, they really truly believe that they're doing something good for the world.
Yes, a lot of them do. They think that, if you have to crack an egg to make an omelet, it's okay because the omelet is good.
Right.
And so they justify anything that way.
Right. And so I guess that's kind of the point that I like to make is that, a lot of people, when you say the word conspiracy, you start to talk about these things, people start to envision this room somewhere where these people get together, rubbing their hands together and doing the big evil laugh, we're going to rule the world and all this stuff. And
no, that's not how it works.
Right, right. And so I like to clarify that. I like to try to bring the human aspect to it, understand these people and who they are and where they come from.
Yes, but now they do meet together. I mean, we do have, you've heard about the Bilderberg Group, for example.
Sure.
And these are the people from all around the world, and they meet in secret. You can't get in there. The few people from the press who are allowed in are members of the group. They're not there to cover the event. They're there to participate in the event, and they're all sworn to secrecy. Nobody talks about what's in there. So there's secrecy. There's no question about that.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, Alex Jones, who I'm sure you're familiar with, he did a whole documentary where he took a film crew and went outside their events and tried to get in and tried to document as much as he could, but he couldn't get much.
Oh, that's right. They don't let anybody in there. So there's no question there's secrecy involved, there's coercion involved, there's deception involved. The only thing is, what do you call it? Let's not get hung up on the word conspiracy. I call it a movement to create world global government based on the model of collectivism. And in order to bring that about, these people do have to use deceit. Now, if you want to call that conspiracy, I don't know. Otherwise, let's just call it a movement that we don't like.
Right. And explain to us what collectivism actually is. Tell us a little bit about the details there.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think in the past, one of the problems we've had is that we've had bad words to choose from. At least we choose bad words to describe political ideology. People use such words as left versus right, or conservative versus liberal, or communist versus fascist, and all these words they throw in. Socialism, communism, fascism, Nazism. Now we've got neoconservatism, we've got Republicans and Democrats. All of these words are supposed to define in some way how people think. But yet when you look, they define nothing. They mean nothing because they mean different things to different people. When you really look at it, in the Western world at least, there are only two ideological positions, believe it or not. Only two. And all the rest of these words are merely variants of those different positions. Now, the two ideological concepts which are opposed to each other are called collectivism on the one side and individualism on the other. And all of these systems like Nazism, communism, socialism, fascism, and so forth are all variants of collectivism. Underneath, once you peel off that label and look at the substance of them, they are all identical. They all have the same underpinning ideological concepts. And the opposite the concept of individualism is, as I said, just the opposite of those things. So what are those elements? We don't have enough time for all of them here, but just to give your listeners an idea of what I'm talking about. One of the most important concepts held by all collectivists, whether they're Nazis or communists or neoconservatives, all collectivists believe that the group is more important than the individual, and that the individual must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of a greater number.
Wow.
Now, I was taught.
I get the chills just hearing you say those words.
I was taught that in school, and at the time it sounded good. I thought, well, after all, we live in a democracy, don't we? And the majority rules, so we've got to have the greater good for the greater number, right? And, it's sort of a mental short circuit. You just assume that that's a good concept. Math has nothing to do with it, But first of all, the real trick comes with the word group. There is no such thing as a group. Group is merely a word. It's an abstraction. It's a word concept. It represents this mental concept of many individuals, but only individuals are real. The rest is abstraction. It's like the word forest. There is no such thing as a forest. You can't touch a forest. You can't burn down a forest. You can touch trees, and you can burn down trees, but when you put them all together, we have this abstraction called forest. But the only real thing out there are trees. And the same thing in society. The only thing that exists in society are people, individuals. And so when you say that the group, which is an abstraction, doesn't really exist, when you say that the group has rights that are above the individual, you've made a huge mistake. Because what you've done is you've set in motion a rationale that dictators and demagogues can always use to justify any atrocity. I don't care what it is. They can say, well, it's for the greater good of the greater number. It's for the good of the nation, or it's for the good of society. It's for the good of mankind, all of these things. Therefore, they justify taking away the rights of individuals, which are the only things that really exist.
Right.
So,
excellent. I've never heard it explained quite that succinctly. That was great. And so then moving on
that's one of the underlying pinnings of collectivism.
Right.
And there are others, but anyway, if anybody's interested, I invite them to come to our website, because we've got a lot of material on this,